We've talked a lot about what types of things you might need to be prepared to survive for periods of 3 days, 3 weeks, or 3 years. More important than all of those scary scenarios that we spoke of is to not be scared, but instead to be prepared. So we don't want to scare you, we want to prepare you. Today we're going to talk about what you need to survive for 3 days, 3 weeks, or 3 years. Each list that we present is a basic survival list, tells you what you need, what you can store up, and what you might need to get in the event of the actual emergency. It's a 7-part list. It's basically a step-up list, meaning that you'll need all of the items from the previous list to survive for the extended period. So you'll need these 7 things to survive for 3 days, and for 3 weeks you'll need these 7 things and the previous things, and then for 3 years you'll need these 7 things and the previous 2 lists. So we'll start with the first list of some of the bare necessities and essentials for survival. A lot of this is based on what the government recommends and then also what some of our experts recommend at Well Prepared. The 3-day basic emergency. We talk a lot about what these types of emergencies might be, everything from an earthquake to a flood or a hurricane. These are the types of emergencies where you basically want to try to shelter in place if you can. Be that at your home or at your job or at your school. If it's a bad enough emergency that you need to kind of hunker down and batten the hatches, you're going to want to try to shelter in place where you have your bare necessities. The thing about a 3-day emergency is that the U.S. government does expect and recommend that every citizen is able to sustain and provide for themselves for at least 3 days. It's the bare minimum that they recommend. So this is the type of kit or the type of bug-out bag that you definitely want to have with you. We do recommend at Well Prepared that you put together or purchase a survival kit, a bug-out bag that has these items and is lightweight, easy to carry, and you can kind of take it with you everywhere you go. What we practice is, since we're usually close to our vehicle, and most people are, go ahead and get one of these kits, one of these bug-out bags, throw it in the trunk of your car, leave it there. Don't take anything out of it. You can always add to it, but make sure that it sustains at least the bare minimum of all these essentials, and just take it with you everywhere you go. We did mention before, and we like to kind of stress the fact that a disaster does not wait for you to be prepared. A disaster doesn't necessarily occur at your home when you're sitting right in front of all of your survival gear and your bug-out bag. It can happen when you're on the road. It can happen when you're at school. It can happen when you're at work. So the best bet is to take this with you, put it in the trunk of your car, and make sure that it's completely stocked. As we get into the bigger kits, those are the type of things that you kind of want to keep at home because they're larger. They'll take up your whole trunk. So for the basic 3-day emergency kit, most important thing is going to be food and water. Most adults are going to require a certain calorie intake. The recommended is at least 1,200 calories per person per day. That's a basic 72-hour kit. And in most cases, you'll want some kind of a gel fuel or propane oven. You do see some emergency ovens or camping stoves. That would facilitate cooking the food if it's necessary. A lot of dehydrated foods and survival foods do come dry. You have to add water and boil them for a certain period of time. So you want to make sure that you have enough fuel to cook that food for that period of time. It doesn't always require that you have a bug-out bag. Most people have enough food and water and supplies at their home to last for at least 3 days. They might be scraping the bottom of some canned food by that time, but they at least do have those bare essentials. Keep in mind though, it's very good to have a bug-out bag so you can throw it in your car, you can take it with you to work. You can always have it in case you need to leave and you can't shelter in place at your house. If the disaster hits and it's destructive in nature, you might have to grab these supplies and go. And that's really hard to do with just canned food or boxes of dry pasta or something like that you might have sitting in your cabinet right now. Water. You technically need about 2 liters per person per day. That's just drinking water. We like to kind of round that up to a gallon because you're going to need water for cooking, you're going to need water for sanitation, for cleaning dishes and things of that nature. And sometimes you may become overexerted, so you're going to need more than that simple gallon. It's a big hassle to make sure that you have 1 gallon per person per day. If you've got a family of 10, you've got 10 gallons per person per day, so you're looking at 30 gallons of water for a 3-day emergency. Always keep in mind that you really, really need to have enough water. It may be that you need to get some kind of storage container. You may want to ensure that you have some purification tablets or a a generic filter of some sort, something that's going to give you the ability to clean some water if you can't get water at home, so the water goes down or the electricity is out. A really good tip, a free water storage that most people have, almost everybody, is your water heater. Inside of your water heater, if you stop using your water, it stores anywhere between 20 to 60 gallons of water. So if an emergency does hit, always keep in mind that if the water hasn't been used, there is a good storage of water inside of your water heater. Shelter. Usually, you're able to shelter in place. Some of the types of disasters you might face might require that you reinforce your shelter. If there's any kind of radiation, any kind of dust, any kind of biological or chemical contaminants outside, you may need to use duct tape or plastic sheeting to cover up your windows, cover up your doors, and make sure nothing outside gets inside. So you may want to have a good supply of duct tape, some plastic sheeting, and maybe even some tarps. A couple of cheap tarps you can use to improvise a little shelter outside to keep you dry from the rain or the snow or something like that. Power. Most cases, you're not going to have to worry too much about power. Power goes out for 3 days, you'll probably survive it. You might want to have some batteries, backup flashlight, and a crank radio. The crank radio is really important because you can hand crank it. It produces its own electricity. They have several varieties available that do give you access to not only AM and FM, but also weather radios, NOAA alerts, things of that nature. A first aid kit. Basic first aid kit is recommended for cuts and scrapes. You also have to consider if you live in an area that's more disaster prone, like earthquakes and things, tornadoes, you may want to have a little bit of an extended first aid kit to facilitate wounds. If people are cut by something, if something hits them or hurts them or crushes them or they get a broken bone, you may want to build up your first aid kit to include some splints and some larger bandages and things like that. Make sure that you have your prescriptions. You don't really want to get caught because you never know when a disaster is going to strike. You don't want to get caught on the last day of your prescription when you only have one pill left and you're planning on going to the pharmacy later on and disaster strikes and now you only have one pill and it's a life-threatening emergency if you don't have your medication. So always try to be, practice keeping your prescriptions up to stock, keeping your food up to stock. In that case, even keeping gasoline in your car. You don't want to drive around with an empty tank because you never know when you're going to need it. Always keep a full tank. So keep as much prescription medication as you can on stock. Try to save up some if possible. And keep that refrigerated if necessary and maybe have some ice packs inside of your freezer so that if the power does go out, you can at least keep it cool for a couple day or two. Protection. Basic protection in a minor emergency would be some really tough gloves. You may have to handle some things or move some things out of the way that could cut you or hurt you otherwise. And you probably want to get a dust mask. A dust mask in the case of any kind of building collapse or a severe windstorm or hurricane or tornado or something like that nature could put a lot of contaminants in the air. So you might want to have a basic mask so you can ensure that you can breathe safely. A couple tools to keep, a gas shutoff, a shovel, and a pry bar. Gas shutoff is a special wrench that's used to shut off gas mains near most houses. Something that very frequently occurs if there's a tornado or an earthquake is that the building can shift, the walls can shift, the ground can shift, and those pipes are affixed inside of the walls and the ground and the foundation, and they very often break. Then you have a gas leak, and that can lead into a fire. Electricity lines may break next to a gas line. Now you have sparks and gas, now you got a fire. You've got another emergency in the midst of an emergency. So to avoid that, you want to have the correct tools to make sure that you can shut off the gas, you can shut off the water, a shovel in case you need to dig out of something, and then also a pry bar in case something does collapse. You have the ability to try to pry, if possible, something off of yourself or off of somebody else to save someone's life. This is a good example of a 72-hour food storage kit. We have these at Well Prepared. It's not just a 72-hour kit. This one actually comes with food storage. The reason it's a good idea to have a food storage kit is because a lot of times the food inside of your cabinet is unreliable. It's heavy. You need a special can opener. I don't even need to mention, one time my power went out and I didn't have a hand can opener. All I had is my electric can opener. So I was sitting there like, how am I going to open these cans? So I'm sitting there with a big kitchen knife trying to open the cans and almost cutting myself. What I really needed was some dehydrated food that I could easily use. Just add water, cook it on your stove just for a few minutes, and you have a very nutrient-packed, very actually good-tasting meal that you can carry around in your backpack. So it's a good idea to have some of the essentials inside your backpack. This emergency kit shows you have a first aid kit, you have some gloves, you have a filter, you've got a little cooking stove, you got several packets of food, a water bottle. Our water bottles actually have a water filter built into it so that you can actually put any water that you want inside of it and drink it straight out of the bottle. And a hand crank radio that's going to give you not only a radio but flashlight so you can communicate and you can see in the dark. Get a kit like this. Throw other stuff in there. You may have some stuff that's specific to you that you like, that you prefer, that you might need, but keep it in a backpack and keep it handy. This is the ultimate thing to have for any emergency for 3 days. This is a must-have. You've got to have at least this no matter who you are. So next we'll talk about 3 weeks. 3 weeks is more of an extended disaster. This could be anything from severe floods to economic collapse to rioting to a war. Anything that would put you out of the loop and put you on your own and in need of services for an extended period of up to 3 weeks. After 3 weeks, you might want to consider either digging in even more or removing yourself from that situation, sheltering somewhere else. So we like to say that 3 weeks is a shelter in a rural area. You can either shelter in your home or you can shelter in a rural area to get away from the mass population. When there's an emergency, you really don't want to be around all these other people that are in the midst of emergency, that are desperate, that don't have any of the resources that you have. It might be best for you to bug out and get out of town, go out into a rural area, and wait for things to blow over. This is a list of 7 other things in the same categories that you would need to survive for at least 3 weeks. This is in addition to the first list. So once you get your first 72-hour kit, if you want to get more prepared, you can easily take another step up and try to get these items and add them in another bag or another area to your 72-hour kit to increase your ability to survive now for 3 weeks. So for food, you may want food storage buckets. A very popular food storage solution that we have nowadays is called grab-and-go buckets. It's a 5-gallon or it's a 3.5-gallon Mylar bucket that you can grab and just take it with you. It's completely sealed. Most of them have up to a 25-year storage life. So if it's stored properly in a cool, dry place, it's good for 25 years. They're nutrient dense. They're actually very tasty. And like I said, you can grab them and go. You can buy them one at a time and kind of build up your food storage so that you have enough food for you and your family, if you have more than one person, for at least 3 weeks. You may want to take some supplemental vitamins to make sure that you're getting the proper nutrients. This will work out even if you don't get the food storage buckets, if you're trying to rely on maybe dry beans and dry rice or whatever you got in your house. Sometimes you're not always able to be perfectly or well prepared. Vitamins is something that is very important to keep an excess of so you can get those bare minimum nutrients and you don't kind of break down during an emergency. Another good thing to have is a solar oven. After about 3 weeks, or of course after 3 days, going into 3 weeks, you're probably going to run out of some of your liquid fuel if you've got gel fuel or propane fuel tanks for your little cooking stove. So a good thing to have is a solar oven. You can kind of make your own. They're not nearly as efficient as a real solar oven, but there's a lot about that out there today. We offer a really great solar oven that reaches over 350 degrees. It's good for baking, cooking. You can leave it sitting in the sun even in the middle of winter and cook your food. It works off redirecting the rays of light into the chamber, and it just heats up to over 350 degrees. So a solar oven is free energy, basically. You can use it now, forever. You don't even need to use it for an emergency. You can buy one right now, take it outside camping with you, take it when you go to your picnic. You can put it outside in your backyard and cook something without using any gas or any electricity. It's a really great thing to have. For water, in addition to the water that you'll need, we're now looking at 3 weeks. So that 1 gallon a day, or if you got 3 people in your family, that 3 gallons a day quickly multiplies into 60 gallons if you're looking at 3 weeks. So just really think about what it takes to store 60 gallons of water. That's a big, heavy chunk of water. So you may want to invest in something like a 55-gallon drum and a basic water filter. In case you can find a water source that isn't safe, you can make it safe to drink. So you've already got your purification tablets in your first kit, and now you get a water filter, and now you're able to maybe get a 55-gallon drum or several 5-gallon containers so that the collapsible ones you can throw in your closet and fill them up if need be. For shelter, now we're looking at more living maybe outside in the woods on an extended camping trip. You may want to have a tent handy, sleeping bags. A lot of people already have these things, so just make sure you know where they are. Make sure that they're easily accessible so that you can get them in the event of emergency, and you don't have to go dig through the garage and take 3 hours to find this stuff. Keep it handy, make sure it's functional, make sure you know how to use it. Practice does make perfect when it comes to preparedness. If you don't know what to do in the event of emergency, everybody's gonna be running around like chickens with their head cut off. Power. Power, you may want to invest in some solar panels, solar chargers, gas generator, and maybe even some fire starters, some fire starting material. At this point, a lot of people do have a lighter or some matches, but after 3 weeks, that stuff starts to run out. You only get so many strikes in your lighter. You may want to have a flint fire starter. A very good thing to keep is a magnifying glass. We keep pocket-sized, credit card-sized magnifying glasses in our wallets. That way, if we ever need to, we can just pull it out and use the sun. Gas generator may come in handy, although you can eventually run out of gas. Solar charger is probably the most reliable of all these things. The problem with solar chargers is you do need batteries. Solar charger will work for some of your household electronics and not necessarily appliances. So some of your smaller handheld devices, you can probably use the solar charger to charge those batteries. You need an array of solar panels in order to charge an array of batteries to operate more of the electronics inside of your house. So that's a little bit larger investment to make. First aid, you're going to want extended supplies of your prescription medications. So if you really want to start prepping and get ready for what many people have faced, a disaster that takes more than 3 weeks for help to arrive, try to build up a extended supply of your prescriptions. Most doctors, if you talk to them honestly and earnestly and tell them why you want to have an extended supply of your prescriptions, they'll go ahead and write you a prescription. They have no problem doing that and giving you extra medication so that you can survive in the event of a disaster. Protection. In these cases, some of these three-week emergencies do include things like building collapses, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, massive storms and dust clouds, nuclear, biological, chemical attacks. You may want to have more than just a dust filter. A gas mask can come in handy. If you have to shelter in place and cover your windows with plastic and tape everything off, that means you can't go outside because the air is not fit to breathe. But what if you have to go outside? You're in your house, you got enough plastic sheeting, and you tape everything up, but you realize you don't have any food or you don't have any water, or the only place you can get water is 50 feet away by the shed or something like that, and you have to go outside. How can you safely do that? You can have a gas mask. A gas mask enables you to go outside and breathe free. It filters out all nuclear, all biological, all chemical agents, and it's the safest way that you can actually go outside and not worry about immediate or residual health effects from breathing whatever is outside. You may also want iodine tablets, potassium iodine. In the event of a nuclear disaster, catastrophe, or attack, you may need to protect yourself against the effects of radiation. So radiation can occur if you're in the immediate blast area, outside of that blast area as it drifts, or what's known as nuclear fallout. The big, huge mushroom cloud will dump all of that nuclear radioactive material wherever the wind blows it. So you might be 200, 300, 500 miles away from wherever there's a nuclear event, and you can become contaminated. Your house, your ground, the plants, everything outside can become contaminated by this nuclear fallout. So how do you protect against that? Number one, like I said, you have a gas mask. You can go outside now safely. But also, you might get contact from the radioactive material through your skin, through your clothing, through what you touch, through what you eat, or just through being outside in the environment. So how do you protect against that? You use iodine tablets, which are basically going to build up inside of your thyroid and protect you from absorbing that radiation that would otherwise sometimes prove deadly. So it's a good thing to have. It's really cheap. You can get them for under $10 for a small supply of potassium iodine tablets. Certain tools to have, you may want to have an axe, a saw, some wire, and a hose. Why do we say an axe? By this time, if you're living in a northern climate, it may become cold. This disaster may strike in the middle of winter. Your electricity is off, your gas is off, you don't have any heat. You may need to go outside and chop down the fence or a tree or anything to burn and stay warm and survive. A saw would also come in handy. It's sometimes a lot easier than an axe if you need to take down a large tree to make it into smaller pieces. Or if you need to build things, you may need to improvise a new environment. Sometimes, your 2,300 square foot house is great right now when everything's running good and electricity is there, but try heating those high vaulted ceilings with a little wood stove in the dead of winter with no electricity. It might be more efficient to live in a little shed. You may want wire in case you need to rewire your house. A lot of these times, when people are planning to prep for at least 3 weeks, you're going to invest in things like solar chargers and batteries. Solar chargers and batteries are great, but they don't really work too well with the AC system inside of your house. So what if you need to run DC lighting or DC power to different areas of your house? You may want to have a good length of wires so you can run DC and have efficient lighting inside of your house to run off of your solar system. And some hose is always good in case you need to get water, transport water, siphon gas, things of that nature. It's a good thing to have inside of your bug-out bag or your kit. These are some things that a lot of people might not have. If you live in an apartment or you live in a condo, you might not have a yard with a garden and a hose and some grass. You would never think of it, and you don't have it inside your supplies, but it's a very good thing to keep at hand. You might need it for later. This is a good example of some of the supplies for a 3-week survival kit. This would be an addition, once again, to your 3-day survival kit. Over on the right, you can see we've got our Guardian water bottle that has the filter built in. We've got a gas mask. There's some of the grab-and-go buckets. That's about a 3-week supply for a couple people right there. You've got the Iostat, which is the potassium iodine tablets to protect you from radiation. And there's a good solar oven that we use. It's probably one of the better solar ovens for the amount of space that it provides and all the accessories so you're able to just cook and go in an instance, in a moment's notice. Very portable. You could carry it kind of like a suitcase. So 3 years. This is in the worst case scenario territory. This is a total chaos and collapse. This is where you may want to consider sheltering in the wilderness. The reason we say shelter in the wilderness is because 3 days you can shelter in your house, help is going to arrive. 3 weeks you can go in a rural area, wait for things to blow over, and go back home. But for a 3-year disaster, where you're basically hitting the reset button, it may not be feasible to try to survive in the city where you live right now. The city is there as it is right now because it's dependent on infrastructure and distribution of goods. There's roads and there's trucks and there's railways that bring stuff in, but there's nothing really there. You may want to go to the wilderness where there are animals to hunt, where there's water to drink, where there's plants to actually harvest and use, stuff that you won't find in most inner cities. So you definitely want to consider yourself, consider your location. It's a good idea to have a map. When your electronics go down, you can't really get on Google Maps and just navigate to where you want to go. Take me to the wilderness. It's not going to work. You need to have a plan ahead of time. You need to have a map of your surroundings so that you know escape routes. You know where the railroads are, where the waterways are, in case the roads get gridlocked and you need to get out of town very quickly. Find a place of wilderness. It's very good to practice. Once again, practice makes perfect in prepping. If you find a place of wilderness, go out there. Visit it often. Learn the plants in the area. Learn what's edible, what's not. What animals are there? What are their trails? How can you survive in the wilderness? You're going to need a sustainable source of food. So going in the wilderness isn't always enough. You can go out in the wilderness and, those animals are elusive. They're not going to just stand there and let you hunt them. The plants are barbed, they're poison, or unidentifiable. You don't know what's edible and what's not. You could quickly become sick or malnourished. You may want to know ahead of time what kind of plants are edible. We love this book. It's called Wild Edible Plants. It gives you an illustrated guide of every edible plant in North America. You can't go wrong by having that book with you. Another alternative, a great alternative, is organic heirloom seeds. It's probably the best investment I've ever made in prepping was organic heirloom seeds. I got a couple of really big packages of seeds that I know if disaster strikes or there's ever an emergency, I can go outside and I can plant these seeds, I can harvest from them, and those seeds are able to be planted again. That's the problem with most GMO seeds that are available now, is that it's like seed control. You buy a seed that's inherently sterile. You grow the plant, the seeds, if it produces any, are sterile and they don't reproduce. So get yourself some good organic heirloom seeds so that you can have a sustainable food supply from now until forever, as long as you can grow and harvest and get enough water and have enough soil or enriched soil to grow those plants. You're going to want some hunting and fishing supplies. Fishing is probably one of the most sustainable food sources if you're in an area with fish, but you can also get hunting supplies. Those may include everything from guns to bows and arrows and crossbows and things of that nature. Water, you'll definitely want to find a sustainable source. This goes back to why we shelter in the wilderness and we bug out. You need to get near a water source. Historically, civilizations have only thrived near a water source, and they pretty much always do. So you find a big river, you find a pond or a stream or some kind of natural spring, and you set up shop right near there. In addition to that, you're definitely going to want the ability to filter that water. Without modern technology and the different chemicals that we use and consume, unfortunately, water is inherently unsafe to drink. You know, water has killed a lot of people throughout history through different infections and bacteria that it introduces into your body. So you want the ability to not only find this nice water source, but to be able to rely on that water source and drink it safely. We've got a great Chanson water filtration system. It's non-electric, so you don't have to plug it in anywhere, and it filters a lot of water. It's not one of these cheap little life straws that you throw in your backpack for your 3-week kit. This can filter water for an extended period of time and keep you safe and healthy and out of harm's way. Not only you, but your family. Very important. Storage options are also important. Even if you find a good water source, it isn't a guarantee that it's going to stay there, that it's going to stay safe, or that you're going to be able to stay by it. So you find a good water source, you got to start storing it up. You see it in small communities, a huge water well that makes sure that if there's a major drought that year or the water becomes tainted or polluted, that people still have a huge water tower in their little town that gives them enough water to survive until they find some other means of getting water. Power. This is the point after 3 years where you really want some good, reliable, rechargeable batteries. There's pretty much nothing else that's going to give you the type of peace of mind and security in an extended collapse or extended chaos, extended emergency as good, reliable, rechargeable batteries. You want something that's deep discharge, like a marine battery. We have some really cool batteries that are even better than marine batteries. But at the very least, you want something that is deep discharge, is able to be discharged to a very, very low level and then be recharged fully. Not all batteries are like that. Your typical car battery can't do that. So you want good rechargeable batteries. You want to invest or invent wind or water turbines, the ability to harvest clean energy from nature, and or solar energy, like we talked about before. You can get solar panels if possible. I guess the hardest upkeep on all of this is going to be, once again, your batteries. So you want the best battery possible. You get a nice solar system, and your batteries drain out, or they die. They cease to function, and you're not able to repair them or maintain them. Once again, it goes back to training. You need the best supplies as possible. So don't go to Walmart and buy the $69.99 battery that is not going to last that long and it's cheap, and it came from China, and it's you can throw it real quick and real easy into your supplies. This is the stuff that you really need to last when it really matters. So go out and get the best that you possibly can. For first aid, you want some major antibiotics. This is another good reason that you should talk to your doctor. Go to your family doctor, ask for a prescription every now and then. Whatever the expiration date is on the prescription, you want to renew it by that time. So talk to your doctor, say, look, I'm preparing for an emergency, preparing for a disaster. I'd like to protect myself and protect my family. What if there were an earthquake and nobody was around for 3 weeks? And during that earthquake or during that flood, if there was a flood, I got cut and I had to walk outside in the flooded waters and there's sewage and it became septic. And I've got an infection where if I don't cut my leg off, I'm going to die. But none of that would have to happen if I just had antibiotics. But the hospital's 3 miles away and it's flooded and nobody's there because the doctor went home to protect his family. So talk to your doctor, get him to write you a prescription for major antibiotics, major pain pills, major pain medications, so that you're able to take care of yourself in these circumstances. They should have no problem doing that for you. Make sure that you stock up on bandages as well. Bandages can come in handy, especially because they're sterile. You want to get the sterile bandages. It's not always best just to throw a shirt or whatever you got on any kind of wound in an emergency. That's good for maybe stemming the blood or the bleeding at that time, but it very easily introduces some kind of an infection. So keep sterile bandages on hand. For protection, this is when you might want to look into whatever kind of firearms you can get for your family and potentially some body armor. And in an extended emergency, you're not going to be the only one who's going through a living hell. You're not going to be the only one who's desperate, who's hungry, who has no one to turn to and needs help or needs supplies. So a lot of the big threat in most of these emergencies, the civil unrest, is a world that is without the rule of law, and people are running around like bandits or marauders. You want to be able to protect yourself. So just look at the police, for instance. How do they protect themselves against the lawless? They protect themselves with body armor, with firearms, with those different types of weapons. So you want to embrace that type of mentality. Get whatever firearms that you can that are going to be good for protecting your family. Make sure that you're well trained. Make sure that they're controlled and safely stored. Make sure that you have extra ammunition and magazines, and maybe potentially some body armor that would give you the upper hand if you heaven forbid, ever have to come up against an armed aggressor and you are shot or fired on, you can protect some of your vital organs. You can probably survive, a gunshot to different extremities, or at least long enough to protect yourself and put down the threat. But without body armor, you can take a hit to a vital area and die instantly in some cases. Probably some of the best firearms that you can get, in most cases, something very simple. A .22 rifle. The ammunition is very light. It's very effective. It's very easy to shoot. Doesn't have a lot of kick. It's very cheap, and you can use it for hunting. A shotgun also. You don't need a lot of skills to fire a shotgun. It's great for hunting birds if you need to. Very easy to use, very reliable. You don't want to get too much into crazy assault rifles and handguns. They're very complicated. They're for assault. They're not for defense or for hunting. So keep it simple, keep it cheap, lightweight, cheap ammunition, very easy to use in case you need to hunt or protect your family. As far as tools go, this is when you really want to look into some of the extended homesteading tools, things that you don't really see anymore. It's hard to come by. I went to an antique roadshow a couple weeks ago, and I got a little hand crank drill. Never really seen one before, but I saw it, kind of recognized what it was. And it's just a drill with a big drill bit on it. You hold the end, and you crank like this, and you can drill right into wood. And I was like, wow, that's great. What if my lithium-ion battery doesn't work on my drill, and I need to drill a hole? If I'm trying to build a cabin or a house for myself, what am I going to do? How could I possibly drill a good hole? And well, maybe you don't need to drill a hole, but you know how effective it is to have a nice hole drilled into something, how sturdy and strong you can make a building? So yeah, you definitely want to invest in any kind of tools that you can, shovels, rakes, picks, axes. Some people that even have access to horses, get some of those horse plows. I don't know, how many people have actually went out and tried to garden, but it's pretty hard work to get out there and dig in the ground and turn it over and sow all the plants that you've sown and reaped. So you definitely want to look into some of those homesteading supplies and store whatever you can, or keep in mind where you can get those things, or at least how to create them or use them in case you need to. So this is an example of some of the 3-year storage survival kit products that we recommend. Over here you can see we got a big huge line of buckets on the lower left-hand side. That is about a year's supply worth of dehydrated food. It's a really cool thing to keep in case you need it. You can actually extend that much further. This could help you survive 3 years very easily if you're in the circumstance where disaster does strike and no help is coming. This right here would supplement whatever diet you're able to obtain from around you. So if you're able to do some hunting, you're able to do some gathering, you're able to grow some food, this will help you kind of supplement that, and you can stretch this out for 3 years, 10 years, who knows how long, maybe even the full 25 years of the shelf life if you have up to a year's worth. But at the very least, that gives you a year of not worrying. It's the ultimate life insurance, because not only do you get it and you can use it if you need it, but it's there, it's in your hand, it has substance. You can hold it and you can move it around, you can use it, you can cook it, you can eat it. It's actually pretty good. I've tried several of the varieties, and sometimes on a lazy camping trip, I'll just bust out one of my food buckets and cook that instead of bringing something along that I have to kind of prepare. As far as batteries go, got a good example of one of the greatest batteries you can use right here for a solar system. Deep discharge, longest lasting, lowest maintenance, probably the best of the best that you can possibly get. Over on the right is our Chanson water filter. This is the water filter that's going to give you the ability to filter mass amounts of water, of contaminants, bacteria, heavy metals, the whole 9 yards. So, a lot of times you go up in the middle of the woods, you find a good water source in the wilderness, and you think it's good. There's no dead animals in it. It's not frothy. There's no contamination. There might not even be any bacteria. But this is a natural spring that comes from up in the mountain, and there's tons of toxic heavy metals in it. There could be lead, there could be iron, there could be any variety of metals and chemicals that you need filtered out. So this is non-electric. It'll help you, and it actually has a storage tank to where you can store a certain amount of filtered water and use it for later. It's a great alternative. Probably the best of the best up top is our seed storage. In fact, most governments around the world, and several governments work in conjunction with each other to have seed vaults, and these are called doomsday vaults, in which they keep seeds for all the different plants and varieties around the world. In case disaster or calamity hits any given area, they can go and reseed that area and grow it back. So it's a good idea to have seed storage if you have it, or if you can. We've got tons of different varieties, everything from fruits to vegetables to herbs, medicinal plants, the whole 9 yards. And these, once again, are heirloom. They are organic. They're non-GMO. That means you can plant these seeds, you can harvest the plant, and replant the seeds from there. So this is the ultimate sustainable life cycle prep that you can get. All right, thank you for watching What You Need to Survive. We do like to ask you, once again, do you have what it takes to survive? And we urge that everyone be prepared, because you never know when disaster can strike.